with the more intense lights, you're going to have as much going on with some of your cast shadows as you do with the bottles themselves. I'm not going to do, and again, the edge of the cast shadow is usually darker because you're looking through more glass, so it's blocking more of the light. I'm going to do a lot with like the kneaded eraser and eraser tip with these. So going in with the kneaded eraser and kind of pulling up the center of that a little bit. And then I'm going to take tissue, and there's tissue and Q-tips and the eraser tips both up here next to the monitor and back by the printing press. So where the two pencil sharpeners are. So after I've done that, I'm still going to soften that cast shadow a little bit so it doesn't have a real crisp edge. But now I want to go in and show you how you're going to pull up. So I'm going in with just the eraser tip. A lot of these light areas are a lot softer. Like I'm not going to use the point of the eraser a lot until like the very edge. I've also brought in, I don't think I have enough for quite everybody, but there's like 6 of those little eraser pens. I'm going to put 3 back there. I think there's 3 already back there, and I'll have 3 up here that you can use. But you don't want to use them except for like drawing light lines. Like I'm not going to use them for this part of it because I want this to be softer. And you notice when I first started, I did the one on the left. The reason I'm skipping over to this one is because it's got milk in it and the bottle in the background doesn't. And I wanted to do one that actually had the milk in it. So surface of the milk, catching light. And I have to clean that little eraser tip quite a bit. Just because it keeps picking up charcoal, I'm kind of getting saturated with the charcoal. So I just keep kind of wiping it on my jeans. If you've left a lot of charcoal down, you might want to go in with tissue and actually pull up a little of it. It'll make your life a little easier. But this whole bottle is slightly lighter than the background behind it. Now I'll go in with a little eraser pen and start pulling up more of the details with it. The top of this section actually gets a little lighter. Again, the lip is showing up primarily because I have these points that catch light. It's not like the whole thing. And don't be afraid to let parts disappear. Like on this particular vase, that center section on it, just because of the way the light hits it, almost disappears on it. So I'm using this, there's an edge, and I'll pull up all these little lines. Again, these are become almost like mirrors they're picking up the reflections of the other bottles, the lights themselves. darken some of this a little bit. Milk actually gets a little darker down here just because of the shadow. So you still want to use tissue. The other thing I've put out are little Q-tips, and they kind of work the same as the tortillas or those rubbing sticks do, and that allows me to kind of soften some of these darks so they don't get, I really don't want a lot of pencil marks with this because I want it to feel very smooth. One of the things that puts the milk inside of this is that you'll see reflections that'll cut right through the surface of the milk, right over the top of it. So this becomes a lot of back and forth at this point. But spend some time on these. Don't get too, see a little bit of cast shadow back here. I would much rather that you maybe not get one of them finished, but have everything blocked in and only finish 2 of them, but have them done to this point where you have, you know, you're seeing all these subtle little changes in the reflections and that kind of thing, rather than have them all kind of half done. For the most part, these will be fairly distinct shapes because you are, you know, kind of have a mirror surface. But you'll notice I can only erase up to a certain point. Like it's after I've rubbed that charcoal in, or that graphite powder in at the start, so it doesn't, it's into the grade of the paper. So it's not going to come up to a perfect white. So what I'm going to do at the end, I have these really bright spots on this. So I'm going to go in with chalk, and again, very selectively. And they're going to be mostly where it's hitting the light. You know, it's reflecting the bulb itself. But I'm going to pull up these little highlights and not really soften them at all. But that's where you're going to get some of the this one I'll soften a little bit. That's my Q-tip. Something very subtle. When you're going with the chalk, you're really better off not trying to soften it. Like if you want it to not be quite so bright, just use like a lighter touch on it. As soon as you rub them, like if you rub the chalk, it gets really kind of, if you look here where I kind of soften that, it gets really milky looking. So it's better if I can just kind of barely touch with it and use it that way. Okay, so just going And this still could use quite a bit. It's my razor tip. Again, kind of keep going back and forth. You'll see the reflections bend with that surface. They're going to bend around the ellipses and that kind of thing. Okay, anybody have questions on any of it? If there's still some of the graphite powder floating around, if you need to put down the ground first still, okay, so you can do that. If you have If you've gotten a set of charcoal pencils, you might find that you have like a white chalk in there. If you do, that even works better than the chalk for pulling up, because you can pull up these really fine kind of edges, and it gives you a little bit more control. But if you use the corner of the chalk, you can still do quite a bit without. Careful to have something needle sharp. So I'm going to leave the overhead lights down, and we'll put the ambient